How's it going, everybody? This is the DW-8P programmer controller from the awesome homies over at Retroaktiv, controlling a Korg DW-8000 vintage analog digital hybrid synthesizer from 1985. I'm Vulture Culture, welcome to the stream, and tonight we're going to be checking out what it does, what the DW-8 does, and how it interacts with this awesome vintage synthesizer. I've already done some videos on this synth. It's one of my favorite vintage synthesizers, and it's also super reasonable. So if you want to check that out, there's a list to all of my synth videos down in the description. That's a great place to check out other videos from vintage and modern synthesizers. So let's get started with this real quick. So we've got three menus here. I'm going to go pretty quick. So tap it 3 times and it says Scratch Patch Generator. This is a small screen, so I don't know how well you guys can see that on stream, but that's what it says. And if I hit enter, it will immediately change the synthesizer into basically an initialized preset. And you can hear it as that awesome sort of glide, which we can just disable by moving this fader all the way to 0. Hey, Vulture Mom, how's it going, everybody? Hello, hello. So, real quick, let's talk about the DW-8000. What makes the DW-8000 interesting is that it is the first hybrid synthesizer from Korg. So in '85, a lot of the synth market had started to shift digital because the Yamaha DX7 had come out 2 years before in 1983. And so what Korg was trying to do with this synth is super cool and interesting. They took digital wavetables but ran it through an analog filter, and it's one of the best analog filters Korg ever made. And so what we can audition very quickly is all of the different wavetables that are in the DW-8000. So this is a sawtooth wave. You can hear that I can turn it all the way off. I have a little mixer over here, but this is how the sawtooth sounds. And we can move through each different waveform. We have a square wave. Should be a... Oh, sorry, that's oscillator 2. There's the square wave. On the keyboard, it actually has a little diagram, so you can see all of the different wave shapes that are here. Nice little organ-sounding wave shape. Almost like an electric piano type sound, like a DX7 electric piano. Kind of like an organy electric piano sound. All of these wavetables have names, by the way, but I don't think they're that useful because they don't really sound like the thing they're trying to emulate, which is kind of cool. Machine Storm! Welcome to the stream. How's it going? Spaceman on Earth, my scum buddy. How are you? Can we get some scum in the chat? Fossil Crab. That's correct. DW-6000 was a year earlier. I'm sorry about that. So the DW-6000 and 8000 came out kind of similar times, but basically the 6000 was the little sister to this synthesizer in the sense that it only had 16 waveforms and a few less features. But I believe it had an analog chorus. Correct me if I'm wrong about that. So we can check out a couple more of these wavetables. Definitely organy. I believe this is the brass sawtooth wave, so this was designed to sort of go after the Oberheim-y type sound, I believe, as opposed to just a regular sawtooth wave. You can hear the difference. It's a lot more mid-rangey. Anyways, continuing forward, we have might be some sort of a woodwind-based spectral or additive thing. Those might be violin and cello, actually. You can hear that they're all very useful waves, but, you know, compared to, you might be familiar with other wavetable synths that have some really bright, dirty, aggressive, you know, gnarly type stuff. This is all still very analog subtractive type sounds. Getting a little thin here. Oh, that one's very nice, isn't it? So by using these different wavetables, we're able to immediately do a lot more than would be possible with just a typical analog synthesizer. You can hear there's a lot more content in there. This one in particular is really useful. This is the bell wavetable. And you can hear that that has a lot of content in it that would be very hard to synthesize with a analog VCO or DCO based synth. 40 Thieves, what's up, my motherfucker? How's it going? Welcome, welcome, welcome. What else is going on? You make me want to buy the 8000 again. Well, that's a good thing. Gave one of my buddies this bad boy. Output's too low for my liking. Got $138 a decade ago. Wow, that is crazy. And then he found one in a dumpster? That is insane. Vintage King put out some free EPROM images, which basically are little chips you can put into the synthesizer that give you some new wavetables. That's really interesting. I didn't know that. I bet that's actually really neat. And then finally, the last wavetable is a sine wave. Which can also be useful and isn't common in analog synthesizers all that much. We can control the octave here. So we can go really low. You can hear at the top end of this wavetable that there is aliasing. I can hear a little bit of that Nyquist frequency whine, which is, in my opinion, a good thing, but a lot of people, you know, it depends on what you're into, I suppose. Up here, it sounds really great. And we could go all the way up if we want to get some crazy high notes. Wrong octave, here we go. Definitely can hear some aliasing up there as well. Carrier Signal, welcome to the stream. They have been unobtainable for a while on Retro's site. So, I was talking to Rob today before the stream, and I am happy to let you guys know that they are currently working on putting out a Mark II version of this programmer. So, already, I have just off camera an MPG 50 Mark II. So that's their controller for the Alpha Juno. It has a bigger screen. And when I was chatting with Rob, he was telling me some of the major differences with the DW-8P Mark II are going to be fixing the MIDI latency. So if you run MIDI into this, it won't, like currently, it's kind of slow coming out, whereas the new version will fix that. It'll have four MIDI ports, so it'll have 2 in and 2 out, as opposed to what it has right now, which just has the MIDI in and MIDI out, which that's cool too, so that you can daisy chain DW-8000s or even DW-6000s or the rack mount EX-8000, I believe is what it is. So you can control 2 of these at the same time, which is a super great feature, including all the cool things you can do with either having them be left-right, so you get that binaural audio type thing. And they're porting over the software from the PG2K, which you can see right here. This is the controller for the JX3P, which we've checked out on this channel before. And Rob thinks that's the superior operating system, so that's going to be over on the DW-8P Mark II, and that will increase the number of patch generator categories. So we'll get to that too in a second. So anyways, I just want to let you guys know that if you want to get one of these things, there's going to be a new batch of Mark IIs. They're working on it right now, and it'll be available soon. If you're watching this video not live, but in the future, it might very well be out. So definitely go check out retroaktiv.com and see that for everybody. How's it going, Neil? Welcome to the stream, my friend. So real quick, let me show you guys that actually. Before we get into the nuts and bolts, we have this random tone generator thing. The Mark II, by the way, will have a bigger screen, so it'll be easier to see, but I can see it just fine from here. Right now, I have it on the pad setting, so if I just press enter, it will send a bunch of parameters over to the DW-8000 and automatically create a useful pad sound. really great. You can hear the juiciness of that analog filter, but very quickly we could just hit that button again and try a different variation here and see what we get. Kind of a ghostly sort of pad sound. Let's hit it again and we'll get a new pad very quickly. Really interesting and gorgeous. So why don't we hit this one more time and just see what we get. You know, it's always fun to try that out. It's okay. Let's try another one. Ooh, kind of organy type, you know, gothic-y type thing. Really gorgeous sounding. Aquatic Borealis, welcome to the stream, my friend. So anyways, the Mark II version of this will have expanded categories. So we can move this over to, say, analog and see what we get in this category. Whoa, that's a lot of flanging from that digital delay line. Well, we're kind of getting this sound, right? So it's a very powerful thing that this programmer can do. And I'd like to point out real quick, just in case it's not obvious, that these are randomly generated patches. They are not pre-programmed patches. So even though they sound really polished and finished, what's going on is it's sending random variables constrained to certain parameters and values depending on the category to create sounds as interesting starting points. And of course, if this wasn't obvious, like for instance, this sound to me could have more release. So we could just do that by adding release to both of the filter envelope and the attack or the amp envelope. And now we have that there. Right? Super cool. Stereopping have some decent hardware programmers. So my thing about stereopping is their programmers are very expensive. They're like $1,000+ and they do not have, in my opinion, all of the features that Retroaktiv does. They're good. Like for instance, I have a Matrix 6. I would love to have a programmer for it. I might have to eventually buy that just to be able to get into the deeper functions of that synth quickly. I have an Obi Magic X lying around here. It's over there. And it's okay, but it doesn't really let you get all the way in there. But when it comes to Retroaktiv, in my opinion, there's no better company to buy programmers from. And they're also very good about making programmers for synthesizers that are actually obtainable. So the JX3P, DW-8000, Alpha Juno, those are three really great analog and hybrid synths from the 80s that sound amazing, but just don't have those knobs and sliders, and they're also very reasonable as far as synthesizers go. You can get all of them for sub $1,000, which is a lot less than buying a new synthesizer nowadays, a lot of the time. I really want to get a Poly 800, Michael, because for me, I have a Poly 6, but I've always wanted to do a video checking out the Poly 800 and comparing the two and seeing how close you can get with the most budget analog synth Korg ever put out in the 80s. That would be a lot of fun. These days we get a lot of options, not just MIDI quest like iPad stuff like controller. I love controller stuff. I've actually done a video with the DW-8000 and the controller editor, and so you can check that out on the channel for sure. I'm doing pretty well, Aquatic. How are you? Yeah, it's pretty crazy that Strymon has that going on. So anyways, let's go back to patch gen and then put it into Scratch Patch Generator and hit enter. And we should be right back to this. And you can hear that we have that glide for whatever reason that's on the init patch. So really easy to disable that. How's everything sound, guys, by the way? Is it sounding loud enough? It feel like it could maybe be a little louder. You go run and crank that up a bit real quick. If you guys don't mind holding on with me for just a split second as I run over here, open Reaper real quick, DW-8000. Let's just crank it up to maybe around there, and that might be a little bit better. You guys are the best for putting up with my bullshit. And that's the Alpha Juno. That's why it's not making sound. I think that sounds better. Stereo hopping controller is like 500, and you can load code into it to control multiple synths. I was thinking about their big guys, 40 Thieves. I do know they put out the ones that are more like this Obi Magic X here. So let me see real quick. You can see I've got this guy where it's got a different knob, and depending on what buttons you press, you get different functions. So stereo hopping puts out those programmers, and they're good. They're good. But for me, I'm all about trying to get as close to one knob per function as possible. Yeah, and you can use it across synths, so that is cool. So you use one for 5 different synthesizers. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, the DW-8P does have way more to offer, I think. So hopefully that sounds better. You guys let me know if that sounds about right. Mine is about half dead. Yeah. Definitely like to check out those patches. But anyways, we're going to make some patches tonight. We're going to go ahead and make some really cool stuff. So starting off, we're hearing both oscillators, I believe. So this is just one, right? Why don't we take this and pick one of those cool digital waves, and I want to pick one that has both a lot of bass and a lot of high frequency content. So to me, that wavetable 11 is more interesting than just your standard sawtooth, as far as when we start using the voltage controlled filter, there's more for it to dig into because you've got that high end content. I think it's a saxophone wavetable. Doesn't really matter once again. Let's go ahead and drop the octave all the way down of the actual oscillator we're using. And you can hear it's got that gritty, lo-fi, D50, Casio, and Sonic SQ80 sort of tone that I love. Really sounds good up here. Down here it starts to fall apart. But you'll notice the synth has a lot of bass, and as we start using it more and more, you'll hear that this Korg filter in particular is a low pass in that it passes a lot of lows. It's very, very cool. Much better. Aquatic. So let's go ahead and pick another wave on oscillator 2. I'm going to go with this square wave because that's got some thickness to it. And then we can mix the two of them. And that's fine, but let's detune oscillator 2 so we can get some better sound or more thick sound out of it. That's sounding very good. We can actually put glide on. I don't mind that. And let's see here. How do I put it into... Oh, let's put it over on the keyboard itself. I can put it over to unison. Turn that down a bit. Now it's a little too loud, right? Really monstrous sounding. Yeah, it is intense. And of course we have a noise source too. We can put just like a little in to give it a little more crispiness. I'm so used to programming the Roland D50 that I have to say it's a joy that all of these parameters update in real time. I've been working on a video for the D50, the definitive guide on how to program it, and one of the things about the D50 is when you change parameters, you have to hit the key again to hear the difference, so you don't get real-time sweeps or anything like you can with this. Really glorious sounding filter, which brings us over to the filter. Why don't we talk about this? The amount of low end that this filter gives you is insane. Just absolutely glorious. It's making my headphones rattle, which is great. We can also add resonance. So here's the resonance at 50%. Let's check out how it sounds. And watch your ears. We'll crank it all the way. It is gain compensating. Really crazy shrieking resonance. But, you know, somewhere in the middle range is probably more useful. '86, welcome to the stream. Yes, so Retroaktiv, I love the fact that these, by the way, I just want to say the build quality on this is insane. Like, it's an all-metal enclosure, it's rack mountable, it's tough as nails, the faders all feel great. It feels like something you could take on tour with you, and they're very reasonably priced. They're not crazy. And that's a super awesome thing for them to do. They could charge more, and they don't, which I appreciate very much. So really, right off the bat, really cool. We can also use key tracking here. And so what that does is it changes the filter cutoff point depending on what key I press. So let's put it down pretty low. All right, so right now we're just hearing the bass. And you can hear that it is going up, and we can still hear these high notes, right? So if I turn key tracking all the way off, the high note fundamental should be above the cutoff frequency. We shouldn't hear too much. Yeah, you don't really hear much. You just have something. So the difference here between that and is pretty big. So in this case, I think the key tracking is great because it's not super complicated. And another thing about the synth is, I don't know how well you guys can see over here. Yeah, it's kind of behind the camera and off screen, but it does have all of the parameters listed, printed right onto the synthesizer. So if you ever get lost or confused, you can see what's going on, which is super cool. Edgetone, welcome to the stream, my friend. I have this combo, and it's made it onto every song for our duo Waveform Mountain. Well, I definitely would love to check that out sometime, Edgetone. If you can drop the link in the chat, we'll all try to hit that. Yes, the build of the Retroaktiv DW-8P is better than the DW-8000, which is a little plasticky. Don't love the key bed. It does have that 8K growl for sure. For someone who doesn't own a DW-8000 already, okay, 1 second, I'm going to grab a little bit of green drink. So can I get some Scum cheers in the chat? Cheers, everybody. Would be smarter to just get the Modwave rather than buying a DW-8K and one of those controllers. So, I do not love the fact the Modwave, when you look at a Modwave, the D and the W from the end of the word mod and the beginning of the word wave, I mean, it's pushed together, but you know what I mean, is highlighted to try to make it seem like the Modwave is like a kissing cousin or like the new version of the DW series from the 80s. But the defining feature of the DW series is that it is static wavetables, not morphing wavetables, ran through analog filters. The DW, the Modwave is not that. It's an entirely digital synth. There's nothing analog about it. That doesn't make it worse in any sense. I mean, really, the Modwave is a much more powerful synth. I mean, which would be the case of virtually every modern synth. I don't think you'll ever have an argument for a vintage synth, which is like it has more features than a modern synth. That just tends to not be the case. Modwave, I've never played one myself, but they sound great. I've heard a lot of people saying that they are incredible. You can try a demo of the Modwave VST, which I would recommend because you can hear the sound. It's the same as the hardware because there's no difference between the VST and the hardware. And that would be a good way to check out what's going on with that synth. This is a vintage synth that is, you know, special and unique and has a sound like of all of the synths in this room. I think the DW-8000 was the synth that made me go, okay, there's something special about vintage synths because this thing sounds different than a VST. You can, you know, check out some of these synths and you're like, well, it doesn't sound that different from a VST, right? But this one, there's just something really great about the filter. I'm not saying that if there was like a recreation of it, that there couldn't be I know there's a VST recreation of it that I think is free or very cheap, but this is a very special instrument. So I don't think I answered your question. If you were asking me, what do you think would be the way to go? I mean, maybe watch the rest of the stream, tell me what you think this one sounds like, and then check out the demo of the Modwave and then see how they compare. They're not going to be that similar. They're not really similar in the sense of what they're doing. Modwave is probably closer to the Wave Station, but with more of a Hydrasynth architecture, if that makes any sense. So that would be my opinion there. Anyways, so going back down, I haven't fucked around with Vintage Vault, but I'd like to. Oh, I appreciate it. Waveform Mountain. So youtube.com/Waveform Mountain. So I'm going to check that out for sure. Modwave does not have an analog filter. I just want to be super clear about that. Nothing analog about Modwave. Not that that's a problem. Like, when you compare digital synths from the 80s to analog synths from the 80s, there's a big difference in the filter. Nowadays, it really doesn't matter in my opinion. I still like analog filters, but there's really nothing stopping a digital filter from sounding good. But in the 80s, they were not so good. So when we're talking about vintage synths, things like DCO versus VCO and analog filter versus digital filter matter. Modern synths, not so much. But nevertheless, Modwave's filter is not analog. Let's go ahead and... I want to create sort of like, well, we already have effectively a Reese bass sound going on here. I appreciate that very much, Aquatic. Put some time and effort into thinking about that, though. Wave State VST, I did a stream on that. For me, it's a very powerful synthesizer. I mean, it's so much more powerful than all of the synths in this room. It doesn't sound like the Wave Station, though, which is the heartbreak for me. And I wish there was like a vintage mode button you could press on that. So that's a thing. Anyways, that's a pretty sick Reese bass sound. We could add some movement to the sound by going over here to the filter envelope. So if I add some attack, I think some attack, that should do what I think it... Oh, I know what's wrong. I need to add some envelope amount over here. So we can start getting a little bit of like almost a growl to it, and then we have to add some decay so it can come back down. Now, like an Ensoniq SQ80 or a Roland D50, this has a 6-stage envelope as opposed to a 4-stage attack, decay, sustain, release. So that allows us just to basically have, for a sound like this, you can think of it as 2 sustain stages. So right now, the break level, it's going to go from the decay to the break level all the way down, which is all the way. But if we increase the sustain and add some slope to that, it will go all the way down and then slowly come back up, which is a useful way to break up the monotony of the, you know, static sound of the filter just ending up on a frequency. You'll notice it more if I increase the resonance. Oh, that's interesting. The slope went really fast. Maybe we have to increase that quite a bit then. That's one of the biggest reasons why I don't love it when synthesizer companies put out new products, but they use vintage synth tie-ins to sort of get you to think that the Modwave is of the same legacy of the DW-8000. Yo! Thank you very much for becoming a cultist, Vulture Mom. Appreciate that. I think that, you know, this does have wavetables in it, but you can't morph between them. So it's not really what the Modwave is doing, which that's the key feature of the Modwave, is that you're morphing wavetables like a PPG wave, to use the vintage example, or something like the Waldorf M or the Quantum Mark II or the Hydrasynth or the Novation Summit. I think that's what I called my initial video on the DW-8000. This is the Novation Summit of the 80s, because it has that digital wavetable oscillator into an analog filter, but there's no way to morph between them. I mean, the most we can do is this sort of thing. Ooh. Wavetable 10 has a really cool sort of formanty type sound that's working with this. There we go. Well, the software I got when I was buying MS-20 IC over a decade ago, I do not know enough about the VST version, but there is, of course, the Legacy Collection. They're shutting that down, or what's going on with that? I actually don't know the T there, if you guys could explain that to me. What's up, Shane? So we've got this really cool sort of cyberpunk vowel-y type sound. And it's sounding really good. We can add some release so that when I take my finger, we have to add some release to the amplifier envelope, which just means the volume knob, right? So that when I take my finger off of the key, it's going to take a little bit for the volume knob to turn all the way off. Right now, if I leave it all the way down, then when I take my finger off the key, it cuts off hard. But if I increase it, then when I take my finger off the key, it will sort of decay. Right? We don't even need it to do that much. We can have it do a little less. Really incredibly sick sounding. So that is all of the wavetables in the synthesizer. And it's all 8 voices, all 8 filters, and it sounds really big. But it's still a little static, so why don't we add a little bit of the modulation generator into the sound. I want to bring the sustain down a little bit, and maybe even like the, let's see, the cut off, if I bring it down, but increase the envelope amount. Yeah, that's awesome. So I wanted to get in that area, add a little bit more movement generator, so we get a little bit of dubstep wobble in there. This is Terminator as fuck. So, going into the movement generator, modulation generator over here, which is Korg's slang for an LFO, we have a few different wave shapes. We have the typical triangle. Wub, 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 wub. We could set it to a sawtooth, and that's going to work almost more like a pluck. Also cool, we have a reverse saw or a ramp. Different kind of sound, and of course a square wave, so it's just on, off, on, off. Michael wants a Vulture Culture shirt in red, and you shall have one. Just give me some time and I'll make it happen. I'll post it up in case anybody wants one, because that would be fucking cool. I found a mint DW-8000 reverb for $650. yeah, I mean, $650 is about what you'd pay for Modwave. And again, Modwave has a lot going for it that the DW-8000 doesn't have. It's got a lot more wavetables. You can morph between them. You've got the Chaosilator pad thing, Chaos pad physics engine built in. You've got effects. I don't think you have aftertouch on either of these synths. Actually, wait, you might on this one. Where is it? Let me see real quick. Is there aftertouch on this guy? I know there is on some of these old Korgs, but I don't see it on this one. But anyways, the point being, there's a lot going on with Modwave, so I don't necessarily want to push you too far down the vintage rabbit hole. I feel almost guilty doing that, but I do think something like a DW-8000 $650, incredible price if it's mint. I mean, that would be something that I would go for if I didn't already have one. So for whatever that's worth. You couldn't find the join button. It should be right under the chat, depending on what way you're checking this out, Vulture Mom. Like right now, when I hit on my phone here, even the lower right hand side, there's a little $sign, and there, if I hit that, it will pull up the membership option there. This thing sounds like RoboCop riding on a neon velociraptor. Yes, it's really great. Audio over USB is another thing that a modern synth has that this one obviously doesn't. You have to literally plug it in with instrument cables into a computer. Again, something you might consider. I'm going to put this back to triangle because I like that sound, and we can control. I love where the rate's at. It's actually very cool, but there's something that I don't love about it, which is that the MG is already affecting the sound at the beginning of the envelope, where there's already a lot of sound happening, a lot of change to the sound. So what I like a lot of the times is to actually have the modulation generator fade in as the envelope gets kind of boring, right? Because if I have this off and say the sustain at the same level as the break level, it just sort of stays at that point. So let's put that back in, and then I'm going to add some delay to the modulation generator. And what that does is, at the beginning of the sound, there will be no LFO or modulation generator action, but as the sound continues, it will start to come in. So I'm going to decrease the delay. That took a little too long. Let's try again. Add a little bit.
That is one seriously perverted bitch.
Yo, Edgetone Studios, thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships. That's awesome. And I see that Shane, Ryan, Wesley, Nicole, who else? All got memberships. That's so sick, dude. Thank you. Really? You can't see that on your phone?
Seriously perverted
Weird.
Bitch.
Tiffany was given one too. That's amazing. Oh, thank you very much, Edgetone. I really appreciate that. And everybody in the chat, can we drop
seriously perverted bitch?
Can we drop some scum in the chat? I appreciate that very much, Edgetone, and I'm sure everybody who you just sponsored appreciates that too.
That is one seriously perverted bitch.
I'm going to decrease.
That is one seriously perverted
Yo,
bitch.
man, that is going crazy. That alert is popping off.
That is one seriously perverted bitch.
Oh, I see what it is. It's actually not the delay. It's I need to decrease the slope here. That way it gets to that range where you can hear that wop, wop, wop.
Seriously perverted bitch.
Oh my God, I love seeing all that scum in the chat. Just a reminder, everybody, if you want these custom emojis, just hit that membership button.
That is one seriously perverted bitch. That
The memberships are $5 a month. So if Edgetone dropped $25 for 5, is that what happened? Something like that? I see an issue here with this sound. It's sounding really good and just titanic, like Terminator dubstep awesomeness. But one issue with it is that as I want some legato action to occur. So let me see how to adjust that real quick. I kind of forgot what that is. I could enter it as a parameter over here, but just to make sure I do it right on the thing. Sorry if my dumb head is in the way. We've got the effects here, which we haven't even gotten over to yet. Oscillator, waves, joystick, modulation amount. So we could do vibrato over here, guys, too, by the way, but I'm not interested in that. Ramp generator, which I don't feel like doing right now, but we could if we wanted. Crossfade volume modulation generator. Oh, we do have aftertouch on this synth. So yeah, that's a feature here that you don't have elsewhere. Let's see. Where do I find legato? I know it has it. What I'm trying to do is get the filter envelope not to re-trigger every time I hit a key, but instead allow you to bend up and down without that. I guess we could do it just with the bender here. So if I add joystick to it. Big part of these types of sounds is pitch modulation. Doesn't that sound awesome? We could decrease the amount of that joystick range. Really cool. Very, very cool. A little beard cam action. And by the way, guys, I don't know if you can see this, but this is a 3D joystick, so it goes left to right, typical pitch bend, but you can also apply modulation to the oscillator or the filter further with this. So even though we've already got the modulation generator affecting the filter, if I pull the joystick down, it will affect it more. Just super cool. Might not be a thing on the synth, I'd have to see. But yes, it's great to have the lemon emoji back. Love that cat. Even though she can be a bit of an asshole. So anyways, if we want to go into, let's see, I think it's assign. And then, how do we get to store? I don't want to assign anything right now. What is it? Is there a shift button on this guy? Let's see. Figure out how to actually do this. Well, real quick, before I do that, I can just hit this chorus button and engage the chorus on the synth. So it's a digital chorus, not an analog chorus. That's without. This is with. It's really big and crazy. So let's see here. How do I shift on this? I forgot. I hold this and this button, or this and this button? No, I don't think that's going to do it either. Oh, okay, I don't want to do any of that. Let's go back to main. I have you can buy a card that they put into this that basically allows you to save patches, and I just want to make sure I do that real quick. I mean, I don't have to, but it's a pretty sick sound. How's it going, Mighty Pinto? Welcome to the stream. Gosh darn it, I don't want to run over to the computer real quick and actually look it up, but I forgot how to do it, which, you know, that's part of the danger of doing this type of thing live, is occasionally you lose it. Yes, it can. Vic20, welcome to the stream. How's it going? Yes, the ribbon controller too. Big fan of that. JP-8000 has one. Let's see. So how do I get into that guy? Is this one of these guys? There we go. All right. Store assign source A. There we go. So I had to hold that down. ID location 0 and then enter. Does that do it? There we go. Did that do it? Well, we'll have to see anyways. I think I just saved that patch, but we could also save it directly to the synth, which actually I'll probably do right now, just to have it backed up in case. So all I have to do is, I'm going to turn the course off. Well, let's put it back on. It might have been better. I like it without it. It sounds louder with the course on, but I don't necessarily need that. I think it sounds clearer without it. So I can just hit the right button and then hit 1, 2, and now that's written. So if I go to 1, 1, this is the sort of Blade Runner-y patch. And then if I go 1, 2, we should be back to our sound. Oh, that's funny. It's got the glide in it still. So we could go to parameter 77 and then move the value down to 0, and that should do the same thing. And then hit right 1, 2, and then hopefully that, so Blade Runner, and then move back to, I'm sorry, 1, 2, and then we've fixed that glide issue. I don't know what's going on with that. Dirty Deanna vibes as well. Ah, yes, and of course, the bear trap emoji, another good reason to subscribe. So anyways, that's a really cool dubstep-y sound. Let's go back to the patch gen and put it into Scratch Patch Generator, hit enter. And then put it into Poly 1. Kill the glide. How you doing, my good friend Mighty Pinto? What's new? And how are you, Vic? I saw Espen Croft promoting the DW-8P, and now here you are tempting me yet again. Yes, well, of course, Espen Croft is Synthesizer Daddy. It really is great. I mean, it's not for everybody. We're just having kind of the discussion about Modwave versus going DW-8000 plus a retroactive controller, which I said earlier in the stream, but for everybody who's here now, I talked to Rob today. They're coming out with a Mark II version of this with a bigger screen and a bunch of new features, porting over some of the features from the PG2K to the DW-8P, including extra patch generating categories. It's going to be super cool. Honestly, kind of jealous that a lot of you guys are going to get the Mark II version of this while I've still got the Mark I, but that's okay. So let's make a pad. Let's pick something here. So that's the Sawtooth wave, right? And so why don't we pick another one, and this time we'll go for something in honor of Vic20 over there. Why don't we go for a bell sound, which is wavetable 15. And we'll go ahead and pull that up on the second oscillator. And that one's down an octave, so we'll just bring that up. We could even bring this up an octave. It sounds really grating and horrible, but that's a good thing with a hybrid synth, because you want to start with something that has a lot of harmonic content. So then, as you add some cutoff and envelope amount to the filter, bring that all the way down and bring the decay. So you can hear how this really warm analog filter, once you get into sort of a pluck type shape, sounds pretty good. We could add some release to both of those. So we can get these really cool sort of bell type tones. Really kind of beautiful. We could add some resonance and see how that sounds. Which is starting to take it away from sort of a Yamaha DX7 type bell sound and giving it a little bit more of that interesting flavor. Let's detune oscillator 2 so it gets thicker. Sounds really good. It's a little bit more envelope amount there. Oh, yeah. That's getting very beautiful sounding. Of course, we could kick some chorus on there and, you know, get a little bit more. One thing to note about this stream too is I have over 20 vintage synthesizers in this room, and so I do not actually have a chorus on this. I have this set up just with one of the connections set up in here. Let me see what's going on with this. Let's add some reverb onto this sound to make it a little bit better. But the thing is because this has a digital delay in it instead of, which is functioning as a chorus, I can actually demonstrate that real quick. But to me, that's a feature that you can replicate in software very easily. The synthesizers like the JX3P and the Alpha Juno that have analog choruses, I run those in stereo. This just helps me save on inputs into the computer, because right now I'm using a RME, I think it's a Babyface, 32 in, 32 out. And even with 32 ins and outs, I'm still running out of channels. Oh, that's really cool, Machine Storm. So, right now you're hearing the chorus doing that, but I can actually increase the time here. And you can hear that it actually becomes a delay, because that's all a chorus is it's a very short delay. So if I play this again... Oh, let me turn off the modulation rate there. That almost gives it like something of a like room sound, like almost a slapback. And if we take that kind of further, there we go, that's a real good one. And we can increase the feedback. Wow, really gorgeous and huge sounding. Really incredible. Let's increase the aftertouch to vibrato and the filter. Well, let's start with vibrato, see how that sounds. Interesting, you're sort of getting these ghostly type tones. I don't know if my aftertouch is all that good. Let's try the filter. You can hear it's got that steppy nature to it. I don't really feel the need to use that. It probably is the aftertouch on the synth that's the problem. Yeah, it is very Freddy Krueger vibes. It sounds super, super cool. I'm happy with how this one sounds, so I'm just going to go to parameter 77, bring the value all the way down, hit right, and then program, save that directly into the DW-8000 to program number 13. We can go check something else out. And then pull up 13 again, and we have this great bell sound. We could add some modulation. Why don't we try taking the modulation generator into really fast rates, so all the way as fast as it can go. Now we're moving away from something like a bell sound into something completely crazy. Crazy. Let's increase that all the way and see if we can get something terrible. So we have all the way from something really dirty to something really clean. So in this case, I just want to add a little bit of that. You don't need much. This is the lowest value. Try value 2. And of course we could bring the rate down. What I'm trying to do is tune the modulation generator to be about the speed of the delay. It's actually kind of cool when it's slightly out of time with the delay, actually. Because you get this sort of like stuttering, almost glitchy, sort of granular synthesis type sound out of it. So let's see if this sounds any good. Just totally crazy. Let's increase the rate just a little bit. Well, that's even better sounding, so why don't we write that into memory? That's program 13 now on my synth. Really cool. Just totally crazy. And I hope you guys see the power of this thing. Like how quickly we were able to go from a super boring type thing like this. Oh, interesting that it's scratch padded, but it didn't affect that. Yeah, it's just crazy. Ol Yule bells, yes. So, why don't you guys shout out in the chat any sort of sounds you'd like me to make and see if we can do it with this synth. While I'm doing that, I'm going to make a pad sound real quick, but I wanted to just see if you guys had any types of sounds you'd like to hear, because I kind of tend to do a lot of the same type of sounds, just sort of unconsciously, but I do know how to make more than just Blade Runner sounds. So, let's go ahead and change these waveforms again. I'm going to turn down oscillator 2 so we can pick one. How about a drone? Okay, we could do that. What the fuck? So let's go ahead. If we want to do a drone, let's start with this nice digital sounding wavetable, and we'll bring it in on oscillator 2. We'll pick a different one. Well, I like that one. That's creepy sounding down here. I'm going to bring in a good amount of noise too on this one to help us have a little bit more something going on. So part of a drone is going to be long attack and decay times. So let's go ahead and I don't want to have the cutoff be too low because the synthesizer's cutoff can go very deep. Now what I've done here is I've set the break level to be all the way down, and then a slope that rises to a 50% sustain. So we'll kind of get a little bit of that. Yeah, there's definitely a church organ type sound. Anyways, now we can do something similar that we did with the bass line earlier, which is we can add some movement generator to the actual voltage controlled oscillator. Actually, let's apply it to the oscillator first. Some nice vibrato will be helpful with this, and then let's add a little bit to the filter as well. Increase the rate here a bit, and why don't we do the up ramp, because that's kind of unique and different sounding. very spooky sounding. What I want to do now is add some level to the effects here, increase the time, the feedback, and so we should get something like a delay. Good. And I want a lot of that, so we get a lot of ambience, but I'm going to increase the modulation depth and rate so we get some pitch modulation to that feedback. We don't need very much, do we? Good night, Autumn. Wow, that is spooky. It is crazy that you can get so sound designy with the DW-8P with a synthesizer from '85. I wouldn't think you'd be able to make sounds that complex and interesting with a synthesizer that for the time had a very pared down feature set. Really incredible, and just once again why you should go out and buy one of these guys. It's just the most fun. So that's patch number 4 that we've made on this live stream, or I'm sorry, patch number 3. What was the other one that someone else said? Elephant squeal. That one I don't know how to do, Shane. That might be a little much. So let's hit the scratch pad generator. Back to a standard sawtooth elephant scream. Let's increase the joystick here. We're getting to, okay, so it's sort of close to a digital elephant scream. Keyboard tracking, cutoff, resonance, all the way up. What about the, how do we increase the... Oh, this is cool. So I just accidentally tracked the filter to the key bed, which has a really cool sound while I was trying to create an elephant scream. It's kind of elephant screamy a bit. Okay. Any other types of sounds that you guys would like to hear? I'm going to go back and resend that scratch patch. Turn off glide real quick. Go back to the original idea of doing a sort of organy type pad. Wavetable 7, I suppose. And on this one, let's go with something like a sine wave. But we're going to put the octave all the way up. It's going to be very beautiful. E-pianos. Okay, that's a great one. I'll go ahead and do that now, actually. Why not? Sine wave is not a bad place to start with an E-piano because that's what you're doing with a DX7. So we're going to apply some modulation generator to the pitch of the oscillators. And then just slow it down a bit. Make sure we're on, turn the delay off and slow it down. Something like that. It doesn't need to be crazy, but just a little bit to get some movement in there. Turn those all the way down. Almost like a flute type sound, right? Let's add some release to the sound. So, by the way, if you need to fake like a really beautiful analog, but not particularly complex E-piano sound, you can do it just with a sine wave like this. You know, that's not that far off of sort of like an analog way to get that sort of a sound. But we actually do have a wavetable in here. Yeah, I think it's this one, 4. So if I'm remembering correctly, wavetable 4 is like E-piano, and then wavetable 5 is E-piano hard. So I'm going to use that one for this example because it's got a higher time. So if you listen to the very top of the sound, you'll hear like a really high whine up there versus on wavetable 4. It's got more mid-range, but I want that really high-end stuff. So let's bring all of those down and get a mixture of these two. We'll bring up the sine wave first. And I want to bring the first wavetable up just to where it starts getting annoying. Remember I was saying with these vintage hybrid synths, what you kind of want to do is get the wavetable section to sound a little annoying, a little brittle, because you're going to chop it up with the analog filter, which is going to get that under control. So it's good if it's like a little annoying. I'm going to crank it up even more so it's a little more annoying. This is a secret to sound design. That's sounding good and very, annoying. James, welcome to the stream. Sounding good. We could add a little noise. Just a little bit to fake the sort of distortion that creeps into a Fender Rhodes. But anyways, we need to get to the cutoff. So first off, let's add a little resonance and see if we like that. I'm trying to find a frequency where it's really warm and big and lush that it can fall to. I'm going to add keyboard tracking. That'll help it sound more natural. So sounding good. We could maybe even bring it down a bit. No, I don't want it to lose the power. Right around there is good. If I go below value 27, now I'm starting to lose it. But I don't want any of those harmonics. I want it to completely fall out of there. But as we increase the envelope amount, and we can bring the attack all the way down, but we can add some decay in. Add some release. getting a little too squelchy, so I'm going to remove the resonance. There it goes. So without any resonance, we're actually getting that very nice sort of... Now we're kind of like dreamy piano type sound. We'd add some more decay if we want to open it up a little. Syntronic is not a sound designer's dream, but the sound quality is excellent. Syntronic. Tell me about that. We were just talking about that the other day, somebody. What's the difference between wave sequencing and just a regular wavetable synth or wave synthesis in general? Good question. Glad you asked. This is sounding pretty good. You could increase the cutoff, by the way, Big Grime. If you wanted to have a little bit more of that, we could also add velocity sensitivity. That would help to both the amplifier and the filter, so we can get kind of more realistic. All right, Shane, to answer your question quickly, it's a good question because people use the word wavetable synthesis in a bunch of different ways that don't all mean the same thing. So when wavetables were first pioneered by PPG back in it might have even been late 70s, but definitely by the time the PPG wave came out, the idea of storing a single cycle of a waveform in RAM in a synthesizer became possible. Now, they actually, on the earliest wavetable synth, had the capacity to blend between a bunch of different wavetables. You have to remember this synthesizer cost, I feel like a Synclavier and some of the other ones cost like over $100,000 adjusted for today's dollars. Like adjusting for inflation, that in, $1981, these things were insane. They were just like way out of the reach of mortal humans. But they did exist, and what they let you do is with one knob, it would just go between different wavetables. It actually didn't interpolate, which means blend between the wavetables, but what they did was they came up with a sequence of wavetables that were, each one of them was like a different step in the sequence of waves. And so what they were able to do was kind of fake some sort of modulation into the sound by turning that, or having an LFO control that. That's the very first wavetable synth. I believe there might be something else, but that was the one that counted. Later on, companies like Korg, around 85, Ensoniq, and Roland with their D50, which came out in 87, realized that you could store short samples in ROM or RAM and use that, but there wasn't any morphing or anything like that. And so that's what we mean most of the time when we say wavetable synthesizer, when we're talking about vintage synths, is instead of having an analog source for the sound, it has a digital source for the sound. And that digital source is technically just an extremely short sample of one cycle of the wave that's then stretched or shortened across the entire keyboard. And this synthesizer has 16 wavetables in it. Its predecessor, the DW-6000, which can also be controlled by this controller, had, I believe, half that many, so 8, something like that. Ensoniq SQ80 has closer to 100. D50 has something like 75-ish wavetables and then a few loops that they created by sticking all of those together. But there's no morphing between the sounds on any of the synthesizers in this room. Quai K3, also a wavetable synth. Hypothetically, you could just have a wavetable synth that does just like saw, square, and triangle, and it would just be like like a digital version of an analog synth running through an analog filter. That's what we mean most of the time by a hybrid synth, is digital wavetables running through an analog filter. Fast forward into the world of VSTs, and Native Instruments puts out Massive somewhere around the year 2000 or 2010, somewhere in there. And basically what happened is they let you blend. So one wavetable would morph into another one, and that became the renaissance of wavetable synthesis. And then the most popular software synthesizer nowadays would be Serum, which is basically the exact same concept as Massive, but just allows you to import your own wavetables and has better sound quality, yada, yada, yada. Whereas Native Instruments, you were confined to what they had built into it, which is why a lot of music from that era, the Skrillex era, all kind of sounds the same because they were all using the same wavetables. And sound design went from being like all of what we're doing during the stream, and it became just turn the one knob. Assign an LFO to that knob, and then that knob kind of does all the sound design work for you, which is okay, but it is what it is, right? So that's the definitions of wavetable synths. So if you're talking to a software person, you said wavetable synth, they're going to expect it to be like Native Instruments Massive, or X for Records Serum, or Vital, or Arturius Pigments. Omnisphere is a wavetable synth now, where every single digital sound source is morphable, right? So that's a thing. Let's see what else we're going on. I haven't heard of Syntronic, actually. Yeah, that's a thing. Welcome back, Edgetone. So to finish that off, stretched across the keyboard. So if you were to look at the wave, are you able to play a certain part of the wave on the keyboard, left to right? No, so that's thinking about the wave as being more than just a single cycle, right? So if you think of a sawtooth wave, it starts from the top and goes to the bottom, right? That's a single cycle or period of the wave. So that's all, like RAM was so pathetic in the 80s. That's all they could store was 16 of those. So they made each one of them different. But there's no such thing as like a left to the right of the wave. You need the entire cycle to hear anything. I hope that answers your question. So it's just the cycle, the waveform itself gets shorter the higher you go up on pitch. That's just the physics of the thing. Does that make sense? Yeah, you don't need any of this old stuff, by the way, Machine Storm. Arturia V Collection has a lot of really cool vintage wavetable synths. Yeah, it does have that sort of Nexus Vanguard feel. Back to our really cool E-piano sound. Let's add some effects. Let's add some feedback and delay. Get rid of this mod rate and depth. Let's see here what we can get. I'm going to increase the vibrato a bit. I think it's, now that we're here, I don't mind it being a little dreamier, right? I'm going to decrease the rate a bit so it's a little more of like a wow and flutter from an old record. All right, that's a little much. It almost sounds, yeah, like an old record. That's a little too much still. I think it sounds a little sharp, so I'm going to bring the envelope amount down a bit just to help kind of cut that down. Yeah. That makes sense. I should definitely clip that and upload it to the channel. I think that's sounding pretty good, and we didn't really have to do a whole lot of programming. Basically just vibrato to the sound, a sine wave up 2 octaves. Yeah, I mean, does that sound good to you, Big Grime? So we can kind of control that sound too, depending on what we want to do with the sine wave. So what's interesting is I actually think I like it without the sine wave. But what we can do to thicken up the sound is drop the octave to the same octave and just make it the same wave as the first wave. But then detune it. So we get a little bit of natural chorusing in there. We can actually reduce the vibrato a bit now that we have some detuning in there. Bring this up. And now that we have that, I want to add a little bit more envelope amount. Increase the velocity sensitivity of the filter. I want to make it more dynamic. I'm thinking that sounds like a pretty damn authentic, you know, DX7 Fender Rhodes type sound, you know. I feel like that's there. Sounds really good. I'm a fan of that. So well, let's go ahead and write that into memory. So that's 115. Go back to some Blade Runner action. Go back to 115 and got a nice electric piano sound. So what else can we do sound design wise? What else would you guys like to check out as we're coming to the end of the stream? What else would you guys like to hear? I like how velocity sensitive it is. It's very... I actually don't know a single use this had, like a use case it had where someone used it on a soundtrack, but obviously it was probably used on a lot of songs, right? Let's get some horns. Okay, so let's go ahead and once again scratch patch generator. Turn the glide all the way off, and we're going to set both of the wavetables to what is... You can look at the wavetables physically and kind of guess what they are by... So wavetable 1 is a sawtooth wave, right? If I put it to 8, it's like a sawtooth, but different. That's, I think, the horn wave, because it's like more mid-rangey, right? So what I want you to set both of the oscillators to 8 and then detune them. So we're kind of in this territory, right? Like... You know, that sort of sound, right, we're all familiar with. We'll probably detune it another one further than that, so. Right, let's add some release to the filter. Not too much, but just enough to stop it from being sharp. And then let's bring the cutoff all the way down at first. We'll adjust it. Envelope amount all the way up. And what we want is a fast attack on the envelope. Let's add some resonance so it gets juicy. There we go. So one way that you can fake an ADSR on a 6-point or a 6-stage envelope, if like you don't want to deal with those middle stages, just pretend the 3rd, 4th, and 5th stage are all sustain stages. So I'm going to set all of those to 50% because that's the rough sort of recipe for an analog brass sound. We could add a little noise in. I don't know if I really care for it, but a subtle amount might add a little of that breathiness that comes from a physical trumpet or trombone player actually blowing into the fucking thing. Jump rolled us. Thank you very much, Bucky. Love you, brother. All right, so what does peak do when it's mixed into an ADSR? Okay, so, well, on this one, it goes attack, decay, break level, slope, sustain. So break level is an additional stage that an additional point. So in this case, like if I increase the slope and bring the break level down, instead of it just falling from it'll attack up and then decay is the time it takes to get from the top to the sustain level. Well, the break level we could set actually below the sustain level, and then it will go down to the break level and then slope back up to the sustain level. So this is what this sounds like. So what I like about synthesizers with 6-stage envelopes, I used to fear them. I've kind of gotten used to them. And what it is that when you normally just kind of hit that sustain level, right, it's kind of boring because the synthesizers, like all of the interest from the filter moving just sort of stays static, right? Whereas if you have a extra couple of stages in there, you can have it kind of go someplace and then take its time and sort of drifts open so you can get a different type of sound out of it, you know? So that extra stage, the break slope and the break level and the slope makes it possible to make a sound like that. Let's increase the cutoff a bit. Sounds super, super massive, doesn't it? Let's increase the detune a bit further. Let's see if it's too big. Yeah, it is. It's too much. But 5 is a beautiful place. Let's increase the level of the digital delay line and keep the time all the way down, but add some mod rate and depth. So now we've got that like chorus type sound going on, so. Pull the detune back. Really massive. And again, once we've hit that sustain stage, it then gets a little boring. So why don't we do a little bit of modulation generator to the sound. So I'll start with it all the way up so we can hear what we're doing. Let's set it to a pluck. Really awesome sounding, but let's just increase the delay a lot and see what happens. So one thing that I don't love about the way the delay works on the DW-8000 is that it doesn't like fade in like it does on, say, the Korg Poly 6. It just starts, so you're gonna have to time that well. Sounds really good. We just bring it down a bit so it's not so crazy, right? Maybe 50%? That is gorgeous. Like, that is so fucking sick. We could take a little bit of the attack off of the front of the amplifier to give it a little bit more of that authentic brass thing. Take that more further, turn it kind of more into a pad. Let's bring that down. I don't need too much of that. I mean, that's awesome. Like, I can't believe how good this synthesizer can sound. Let's add keyboard tracking all the way. See if that's... Need to bring the cutoff down a little bit now. I actually don't think I like it with key tracking. Let's leave that off. Wow, that's crazy. Got to attack the decay to sustain the release. Whole track right there. Yeah, it really isn't that bad. If you, I forgot who it said. It might have been you, Edge, but it was, someone said there was a mint one of these for $650, right? And then these were about $500. So for around $1,000, $1,100 bucks. And the thing about this synth, I said it earlier, but it's worth saying again, is of every synth I have in this room, and I have a few that cost a lot more money, this one feels the furthest from a VST in the way it sounds. There's just something about the filter, like we're making a sawtoothy type sound right now. Not that crazy, right? But if you were to listen to this versus if we did the exact same moves, but with Serum or Omnisphere or Pigments, whatever you want to use, it would not sound like this. You could tweak parameters and, add random LFOs to everything to make it sound more vintage or sloppy, right? And that's cool too, but there's just something about the charisma of this really dark filter. It's just sickening. It's just really gorgeous and beautiful. And I hope when people watch this stream, they're encouraged to go out and check one of these synths out because they're really beautiful and amazing. So a DW-6000, the chorus button acts as a chorus enable disable. When using DW-8000 and EX-8000, the chorus button will toggle the FX amount between the last positive value and off. Right, so we could turn this... We turn it off or turn it back on. On mine, it seems to have reset some of the stuff, though. Right, that's another reason why vintage synths are cool. No doubt, modern synths can sound great, and I would argue even better than vintage synths a lot of the time. Because this sound is full of character, but it's also giant. It's got a lot of low ends, so when you actually put it in a mix, you're going to have to sculpt out a lot of that with EQ. But there's just something about the immediacy of these vintage synths, and especially if you add a hardware controller to it, where you get this sort of, just relationship with the sound, and it's inspiring, and it's a little different than you were expecting it to be. To me, I'm like, wow, we're just really right there that quickly. I'm going to go ahead and write this into memory so I don't forget. I would like to try Vintage Vault 4. And like I said, for instance, Luftrum's Vangelis sound set for Omnisphere, which I reviewed on this channel. The link's in the description. If you just go to Watch All Synth Videos, it's in the playlist. Just gorgeous and captivating stuff with a digital synthesizer. I mean, that gives you that exact feeling of that Blade Runner score. So, you can have amazing sounds that don't have to be vintage. And in fact, one of my goals on this channel is to explore these synths, but not have too much of a rose-tinted glasses to it, because there's a lot of hardware people on the internet who are like into hardware synths, and I feel like they almost take it that there's something inherently better about hardware, and I don't feel that way at all. I feel like a lot of the times, if I want to get it done, I'm going to go to software and just pull up a sound I already made. Or even if I want to program, you know, a lot of people can't afford this and this, right? And programming this without a controller is a pain in the dick hole. Like, it's not fun. You want to have something like the Retroaktiv. Now, by the way, guys, you can run a MIDI cable into this and use a controller panel, so crtlr.org, and it's free, and you have all of the control over the parameters like this. You don't get certain things like the scratch patch generator or all of the really cool random patch generators that you get with Retroaktiv. But if you want to program a DW-8000, you don't have to spend all the money on this if you don't mind being in front of a computer, or if you have an iPad and you can use it. I think Coffee Shop, there's a bunch of different ones that do it. For me, I'm a big fan of controller. I think that's a really great community of people that put that together. So yeah, I love both, but picky with both. Don't care about the boutiques. GeForce or OGs, yeah, GeForce stuff is amazing. I get into some heat with my opinions on modern Roland synths, so I'm not going to say anything. So, guys, I think that's a pretty good place to leave it off. I mean, I'm just, like, so stoked with this sound. You know, like, what is it? Something like that. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night because we've come up with a bunch of sounds. Let's go review them real quick. We started with this bassline sound. Really sick, really sickening. Then we moved on to a little bit of bell type action. Really great. Moving on, we have... Oh, yes. This really terrifying drone type sound, so... Moving on, we've got an electric piano sound, so we can do some of this, you know, like... And then finally, it's just this epic brass pad with some interesting LFO movement. Just really, really great. I seem to have lost my chat. There we go. So anyways, guys, I hope you have a wonderful evening and a wonderful week. Next week, we'll be back. I don't have a stream scheduled up yet, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. In fact, it is going to happen, just like it happens every Wednesday at 9. We are doing Scum Night here. One more thing I forgot to mention. So we did a stream last week on the DSS-1, which you can look at the link in the description and check that out if you missed it. Really cool stream. I talked to Rob from Retroaktiv today, and he was saying that this year they will be releasing the DSS-P, which is the programmer for that sampling synthesizer. So you better believe I'm going to get one as soon as they're able to be pre-ordered. And check that out live on the stream, because that's going to be a really exciting thing. And if you missed it, These guys are going to be coming out in a Mark II version, which will be expanding the possibilities, adding more MIDI in and MIDI out, bigger screen, more patch generator categories, just a really awesome thing. So if there's a company to support in 2023 with synthesizers, I would say it is Retroaktiv. I love these guys. They make really high quality products, and just want to say a huge shout out and thank you to Rob for being awesome, both for creating these incredible ways to interact with our vintage instruments, and also for being a really nice guy. Before I do one of these streams, he always messages me and gives me a couple of like things he wants me to mention or something like that. So really, really cool. And yeah, DW8 Thickums. Yeah. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for being amazing. I'm Vulture Culture. Have a great week, and I will see you next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Love and light, bitches.